Hey, what's up, everybody? I appreciate y'all tuning into this interview on another live with Brandon Blakney. Got Chris Hughes with me, does some work with the Charlotte Observer as well as NC Preps. Chris, I appreciate you joining me, my guy.
Brandon, I appreciate you having me on tonight. My pleasure to be on here and talk some high school sports with you.
Oh, yes, sir. So I know, just tell us a little bit about your background first. I know you just had a recent career move combining with Miss Deanna King. You guys doing some big things in the prep football world, especially.
Well, I grew up in the Charlotte area, the northeast side of town up in Kannapolis. Had some military time, but came back, started a coaching career, coached in the Kannapolis area. Also moved down towards Fayetteville to Douglas Byrd High School for a couple years. And then in 2007, kind of transitioned to more into this high school prep media, founded CarolinaPreps.com. Over the course of time, we've evolved with a few different transformations. Got hooked up with NC Preps and Miss King, and obviously kind of worked alongside with Langston, the Charlotte Observer, and I've worked with a lot of guys. I've been fortunate enough to do a lot of TV work over the years. I've called some Shrine Bowl games on ESPN, and have just been fortunate to follow my passion of high school sports and kind of be able to tell some stories of some of the guys and promote the sport at the same time.
So I know you've been getting around. These 7-on-7 starting to pick up. We're just in a crazy time with getting skills in, skill work, and drills in. Just walk us through, what the schedule's been like for you so far, getting back into the swing of things, and who are some guys that have really stuck out this spring and over the summer as well to you?
Well, I really don't feel like I'm back into it full swing. I mean, I would like to think that I am, but I just don't think that I'm quite there yet. I'm getting there, but without no games, without no Friday night football, it just has been really hard with this COVID-19 to kind of find a groove and to really get into any kind of groove or just whatever routine. But I have been fortunate enough to go to some camps, and we've had these VTO combines in Charlotte. A couple of them in here in the past couple of months have been able to go to, and I have seen a couple guys. I think one guy that has really stood out in my mind, and this is a quarterback, a rising senior out of Southern Alamance, who I think has gone way up my radar into one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks really in the state in the senior class. You start looking at guys like, I don't know, Caleb Hood at Richmond County, and
Oh yeah, he's a stud.
some of the other real good ones in the state. Drake May obviously comes to mind. He might be a little bit of a step down from them, but I'm thinking about like David Hines at Southern Alamance. I think he's a true FCS, maybe even an FBS player that I think could end up in an East Carolina or maybe even an NC State if they would throw an offer his way. But he's somebody that kind of really jumped off my radar this week. I thought he was a great looking quarterback, big arm, big tall, 6'4", 6'5" frame, son of a coach. Grew up in the sport. Those guys like that are hard to come by.
Definitely high IQ guys, just grow up around the game, usually poised, natural leaders. Definitely great for the position at quarterback. Now, I know you're big into the Charlotte area. I know a team that we saw a couple teams knock us out of the playoffs out from down there. So I want to talk to you about Weddington High School as well as Vance High School as well, 2 schools that I'm sure you've seen now. Will Shipley, the Clemson commit. Tell us about his game for guys that haven't seen him or people that just haven't watched him yet.
Well, Will Shipley to me is probably one of the hardest running guys I've ever seen. He's not the flashy. He's not a Barry Sanders runner. And I may be aging myself. I don't even know how old you are, but
I love me some Barry Sanders.
I look at some of these 1990s runners. He's like a Mike Allstott. I don't know if you remember him.
Oh, the fullback from Tampa Bay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He reminds me of him, who can come in and just move a pile. Will run right through you, but he's got the agility to be able to make some moves and to cut and get to the outside. And, I think he's a hard guy to pull down because I don't think a lot of secondary guys are going to be willing to kind of sacrifice the body to make a tackle on him. But a huge player, great hips, great body, insanely strong legs. And when he gets out in the open, he's a hard guy to pull down. what a player I think he'll be for Clemson. I don't know exactly how Dabo is going to use him, but I think that he's going to be really good. And just that team in general. Speaking of Weddington, I mean, they're a machine. They just they don't wow you in every position, but kind of similar to Charlotte Catholic. They're all moving in the same place at the same time, like a well-oiled machine. And when you get guys moving with that fluidity, it's hard to beat.
Now, looking at Vance, I know they had a lot of talent last year, and I think them winning state, at least from my perspective, I think they surprised some people. Definitely didn't lack talent, but we weren't sure if they were going to take that next step, and it seemed like they definitely did. And they got a lot coming back this year as well.
They got a lot coming back, and I do think that they're going to be one of the top 2 or 3 4A teams. Even without Power Eccles, who's going to go on and play at North Carolina, who I think was the best defensive player in the state of North Carolina. And it's easy for me to sit here and project guys who I think will play on Saturdays, which obviously he's going to do. But I think he's an Ed Reed kind of safety / linebacker. I think he's going to be he's got a 15-year NFL career, and I've rarely ever said that about a high school player. But assuming he can stay healthy. And have a good college run. I think he's a guy that's he's got a much brighter horizon than Vance and UNC.
That's a high praise.
I mean, and he's a guy. I mean, again, I use Ed Reed. I've had some college coaches who use that same comparison. He can play sideline to sideline. He can play back and play the pass. He can come up and play run support. Strong player, a good football IQ. But he's exceptionally fast, but he plays faster than his speed sometimes. And, I think that's just hard to come by. But, there's some guys right now in the 2021 class who I think are going to have an immediate impact day one when they get to college. And, one of them already mentioned his name is Caleb Hood of Richmond County, quarterback for the Raiders. And, I don't necessarily know that he's going to be a quarterback in college. I mean, we'll obviously look at Sam Howell and Drake May and the cast that Coach Brown and the Tar Heels already have together. But I think they'll find a way to put him in, whether receiver, whether it's at safety, whether it's at corner. I just think that he's a guy that's going to go day one, and he'll certainly have some have an impact. And maybe a guy that I was kind of not thinking about, Jefferson Boaz, who was at East Surrey. Quarterback,
loved him.
Player of the year. I think he's a guy that before the year is over, I think that Coach Brown and the guys up at Carolina, and I hate to keep using Carolina references, but it seems like he's kind of sucked a lot of the big recruits out of the air. But I think that he's a guy, given his size and athleticism, maybe at tight end or somewhere H-back, they're going to find a way to get the ball in his hands. I think that he's got a chance to shine before it's said and done.
Now, I love Jefferson Boaz's game. Won a state title this year. Was a beast on the basketball court. Played some baseball, pitched. Like you said, just played everywhere on the field in football, man. Multiple positions. Love his size. Led the state in passing yards and still going to play tight end. Just looking at more guys in this 2020 class at Carolina, I think this was the class that there's more star power. I think people are paying attention to the 2021 class with guys like Keyshawn Silver and Ra Dilworth. But looking at this 2020 class, I think they're the perfect class to kind of set the stage before this class comes.
Well, they did. And this class here probably set the foundation. But this 2021 and probably every class from here on down. And I'm glad you mentioned Ra Dilworth, because he is just one of those freakish athletes who I think can play several positions. He's going to be one of those great players to look at. So I think that each class, this 21 class, is absolutely loaded. In fact, I think this 21 class may be, in my lifetime, the best or second best class ever to come out of the state of North Carolina. I mean, it's so talented. And that's why it's so sad, and why it's just so – I don't want to use the word depressing, but it's certainly sad that we're not having the traditional Friday night football here during the fall, whether it should be, because these guys would totally be putting on a show.
Definitely, and it's a bummer. There's so much talent out here. Jarvie Ritzy, another guy out there at Glenn that plays with Ra. I think Mac Brown has really just locked in North Carolina, the backyard. Are there any prospects in the 2021 class that you're excited to see going to other ACC schools? I know Zion Reeves was a kid out of East Forsyth here that just committed to NC State. Any guys?
And I like him. And I'm glad you brought him up because he's one of those guys, and I'm glad to see Coach Dorn and still continue to get some of those top caliber teams as he is. Because I'm glad to see him. And you look at what Coach Willard's done at East Forsyth, whether it's, put some guys at Wake Forest and Wisconsin. He just seems to be sprinkling them all around the country now. But I think that he's going to be good. And I'm glad you kind of mentioned that Glenn class too, because, that's one of the casualties, I think, of this COVID-19 is I thought that they had maybe the best defense in the state of North Carolina coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And now, it may not be the same plan in the spring. I know of about 3 of these guys that I think are going to move on to the collegiate level. But I thought that was legitimately a team that could compete with an East, with a Grimsley for that small 4A state championship. And maybe they still will. I don't want to take it away from them. They certainly lost some guys to moving on to college, but I think that's a team that you got to keep your eye out for.
Now, I know that you guys recently released your prep preview, kind of previewing a bunch of teams around the state. Who are some teams that people may not really be talking about that we need to kind of pay attention to this upcoming season that you think could possibly take that next step and be, a story this year?
Well, let's start with the 4A. I think the team out of Eastern North Carolina is Rolesville, who I think, they played Wake Forest twice. It lost to them once in overtime, lost to them in the second or third round of the playoffs. I think that's a team that is destined to kind of become the new power in Eastern North Carolina in the 4A ranks. Coach Martin Samick, who used to be at Parkland High School, he's done a tremendous job in his first year there. And I think they're only going to get better. So Wake Forest, I think, is that one team in the 4A ranks that I think is going to be ascending. Also in the Eastern 4A, New Bern's a team that kind of came out of nowhere last year and won a bunch of games. I think that they were a year or two ahead of getting back on schedule. So I think New Bern's a team that's going to continue to get better. Transitioning kind of more to Central and Western North Carolina. I think we're going to have a lot of the same powers. I think Ardrey Kell could still have a good year in Charlotte. I think Olympic's a team that's going to continue to get better. In the Triad area, I think the Central Piedmont's a wide open league. I think just about every team coming back playing a spring football, with East potentially losing a few guys to college, with Glenn. I think that reels West Forsyth back in the mix. I think Reagan's going to kind of be right there. And don't forget about Davie. Davie's got one of the best quarterbacks in the area. I think that they'll be in the mix. Probably overall, if I was to say one team that I think might come out of nowhere and just strike everybody kind of from out of left field would be Greenville Rose, J.H. Rose out of Greenville. I think that's a team, when we put our top 25 rankings out back in the spring or in the summer, I had them firmly planted in the top 7 or 8 and got a few people that raised their eyebrows at it. But I really think that that's a team just looking at the talent and a little bit of a coaching change. And sometimes that can do it as well. The addition of Caleb King as their offensive coordinator. Sure, he's not the head coach, but he's got a lot of experience and a championship pedigree coming from Havelock. I think that that's going to help them.
You mentioned a lot of shifts, especially in the coaching changes. It's a carousel. Were there any impact hires that caught your eye this season, as far as new additions, new head coaches taking over new programs?
I don't have my list in front of me, so you kind of got me without being prepared on that one. But there's always some big time hires, and every year we have roughly about 70 to 80 changes, which is about not quite a fourth, but almost a quarter of all the coaching changes flip over about every year. So, that's kind of one of those trends or stories that kind of comes about. Coaches though that kind of come out of the blue or that I think is the biggest hire. I don't know. I don't know who I would rank number one because, again, I don't have my list in front of me. I'm just trying to think out of the blue. I think Mooresville High School hiring Joe Nixon out of West Rowan, I think that was a big hire for them. I think that might be one. Central Cabarrus bringing on Zach Bevilacqua, who had some head coaching experience in Porter Ridge, had been at Sun Valley. I think that's going to bode well for them. Kind of sticking to that same area down there around Charlotte, not necessarily a coaching change, but a departure of a coach. And this is going to have a bigger impact than even the head coach. But A.L. Brown High School in Kannapolis, who's year in, year out one of the top 20, 25 schools. I mean, traditionally they're one of the best schools in the 3A. They lost their longtime strength coach and Todd Hagler, who retired and moved to South Carolina, and he'd been in that role for about 20 years. And I think
wow.
that's going to have a huge impact on them. Mike Newsom's still there, the head coach, and one of the best in the state. But I mean, when you've got your right-hand man, your deputy kind of right there with you, who's been with you for a long time and who's as good as he's been, coached in the collegiate ranks, used to be a strength coach at UNC, I think that's going to hurt them.
Now, I've seen a couple of the rankings, top 25 nationally, and there hadn't been a whole lot of love for the Carolina teams. You think any of the teams this year in your mind that stick out, either of the Carolinas, could, make it into that list or stand out maybe, nationally?
Well, I think that Myers Park and Richmond and Vance were right there. I really feel like Richmond County is still the most talented team in North Carolina, top to bottom. I just think the athleticism, the talent, the
They're
numbers.
physical, man. They're
physical.
They've
got the numbers is unreal. They've probably got 120, 130 guys in the program. And there's team strength, their athleticism. I mean, throw the tradition in there, the coaching, Coach Brian Till, everything about them. I think Richmond County's got it all. And I think that they were a team that still, playing in the spring, I don't think they're going to lose a lot of their top players, but I think that they were a team that was going to get up to that top echelon. And I think that they were a team that I thought maybe could or have a strong possibility of winning the championship this year. So they would be my one team. Unfortunately, some of the smaller tier teams like the Shelbys and the East Surreys and Reedsvilles, those national rankings don't always give a lot of love to the lower tier teams in the lower classifications. But we know that man for man, they're really good. And even I'll throw Burns in there in Cleveland County as well. Really good teams.
And now you spoke on Myers Park a little bit. I know Drake May, the Carolina commit, just has like the pro body, prototypical 6'5", 6'6", wide body, has good genes. The stories there. Also saw Langston as well, speaking on Jacob Newman, a potential breakout candidate at the running back position, play some DB for them as well. What should be expectations for that group this year?
Well, I've already said that I think that Drake May is he is a high school version of Peyton Manning. His ability to take charge of the huddle, to change the plays at the line of scrimmage. He is a son of two incredible athletes. In fact, his father was a quarterback at Carolina, and I don't think he was the better of the two athletes. I think his mother was a much better athlete. Obviously, you look at what his brother did playing for Roy Williams at Carolina did on the hardwood. I think Drake May is just a total prospect, and assuming that he stays healthy and his love for football remains, I think that he's going to be one of those guys that has a chance to really take over and do great things at the college level. I didn't hesitate saying that Power Echols would transition to the NFL, but sometimes, he looked like a no-brainer. Drake May, sometimes quarterbacks, you got to be a little bit more cautious with it. But I think he certainly has all the intangibles to have something to work with. And Newman doesn't get a lot of the notoriety just because he's playing behind Drake May. And, you look at all the receivers that he had last year, and I don't think that he doesn't have to carry the load. But because of that, I think it makes Myers Park a better team because they have so many more options and the ability to do so much more without having to rely on one or the other.
Definitely, I'm excited to see that group as well, and both those guys that we mentioned, heck of basketball players too as well.
Agreed.
Some guys just got it.
Agreed.
Chris, I appreciate you joining me, man, on another episode of Live with Brandon Blakney. Let them know where to follow you at on social media so they can keep up with you.
Well, Brandon, I appreciate it again. Make sure you follow us on the website at ncpreps.com. Follow us every Monday night on Talking Prep. So we're moving the show from 8 o'clock up to 7 o'clock so we don't interfere with Monday Night Football. And you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. All my handles are the same, Chris Hughes NC. So give us a shout out, and I appreciate all the following and all the support.
Oh, yes, sir. No doubt. You guys make sure to give my guy a follow. And that's a wrap for us. Stay tuned for the next episode.